This is going to be our quick chat here on foot health as a foundation of movement. But real quick, before we kind of get into this, for anybody in the future who may or may not listen to this, I want to go into a little bit about Blue Chip Athletic Club and me, the founder here. So, my name is Blaze. I founded Blue Chip Athletic Club in 2023. Unfortunately, I've been on all ends of the spectrum of my own health and wellness, the guy on the left and the guy on the right. The guy on the left, 150 pounds soaking wet, who could hardly, I guess, move or do things that he really truly wanted to do in the world of athleticism and strength and conditioning. And then the guy on the right, who was 230 pounds and almost got the boot from naval flight training because I was too heavy for the ejection seat. So just keeping that kind of in mind. In both photos, I was working out for over 2 hours a day, most days, and really didn't understand kind of my body. And that was kind of the impetus for me to start this business here. So achieving your dream body, long story short, doesn't take over 2 hours of work in the gym. It's more about understanding, listening to it, and working to improve over time. Now I train hard, but it's only about 45 minutes per day, and I'm never not educating myself on ways that I can kind of improve and start to make sure that I am able to give that same knowledge back to everybody else, which is kind of why I started doing these weekly webinars for our private coaching group as well. Now I feel like I'm the strongest and fittest I've ever been. And like I said, I'm not working out for more than 45 minutes in a day. And really just trying to make sure that I can help others along the same route. So quick about me, we're going to get into foot health as a foundation for movement today. Thank you for Zach for bringing this topic to me here. So here we go. Let's get into it. Intro to foot health. So what are feet? And why do I have this big arch in this document here? So the feet are your cornerstone for movement. Keeping them really strong and healthy is super essential for athletic performance, longevity, and just general health over the course of your life. It's really important to understand the balance between foot health and strength as well. So this is something that we're going to kind of get into here as we go. But arch, arch for the feet, arch for the arch. That's what we're kind of going for.
I picked up what you were throwing down. That was good.
Nice. We love it. All right. Just real fast, I want to talk through. I've been seeing a lot of people in our private coaching group as well, kind of falling prey to this, and I want to make sure that I hit on this early. Over cushioned footwear is something that is really beneficial for very specific purposes. In this case, if I were a road runner, and I'm wearing these Hakas here to do a marathon, I think that's a really great avenue to use those. You've got cushion, you've got impact that's going to happen over the course of a 26-mile race. You've got all these other things that are kind of lining up for that specific purpose. But shoes like this are not super ideal for cross training. And I'm going to kind of get into that here on the next slide. But what I want to make sure that is made apparent is like this big cushion here is not something that's always going to be super advantageous for us when we're working in a strength building, cross training type of space. So the other thing too, I want to make sure I hit on is that if you're too reliant on overly cushioned shoes, what it can do is weaken your foot muscles, reduce your arch functionality, and then that'll eventually degrade your foot health because your arches start to get super weak. So it's another thing that we want to make sure that we have in mind as we're operating on a day-to-day basis. So real fast, talking through the foot triangle. So this is why that cushion is really going to be something that is important to understand its exact purpose for. So the foot triangle essentially lays out like this. You've got your toe up here, your big toe, your pinky toe out to the side, and then your heel kind of all come together to form this perfect triangle. And in the space of weightlifting, squatting, any of those movement patterns, the key is to have your weight evenly distributed amongst these 3 points. Your foot is essentially going to act as your base of support for all things, walking, moving, etc. in your day-to-day life. So what I want to reiterate is that when you have that cushion that's sitting under this triangle of support, what it's doing is it's creating a gap between where your foot sits and where the ground is, which could end up creating some sort of imbalance while you're trying to do athletic movement. So real things that you want to keep in mind is like when you have the ability to squat and you're able to feel the ground, you're able to like grip the floor almost, you're able to kind of see your body operate in a different light. Now, another thing to keep in mind too is like when you're trail running, for example, and you've got a shoe, and I'm going to go back a slide here, back to these Hakas. If you are on a trail and you're running in these shoes and you end up hitting like a little rock or you end up hitting something else, that cushion is likely going to exaggerate that ankle rolling over or those types of things happening. So it's just another thing that I want to come to light. Like when we're working in these shoes, they have a great purpose for what they're designed for. But when you're doing those other activities with them, it's just something to be super aware of as you move through space and doing athletic movement. So the foot triangle here is something that I kind of wanted to point out as we start to get into the discussion about more of like a minimalist or a cross trainer style of shoe. So real quick, a minimalist and cross trainer style of shoe, typically, especially the new age ones, are going to be promoting something here called the wide toe box. Here you can tell that this shoe is promoting more space between the big toe, the pinky toe, and the heel. And with your toes being able to spread out, you're able to kind of grip the ground and really have that even weight distribution throughout the foot. A lot of shoes, traditional shoes especially, in the sense of running shoes. We'll talk about, cleats for athletic performance, all those things are really, really tight and narrow. So like, let's say you're a soccer player and I've been a soccer player in my past life as well. Like this is what my toes likely looks like in a bunch of my cleats because it's designed for, speed, touch on the ball, all these other things. A ton of new research now is being done that this is actually pretty detrimental to your foot health as well as your overall balance and athleticism. And this is something that's going to be able to provide you a little bit more athletic stability and help you in your training as well. You're going to reduce your risk of injury. Again, you got better grip on the floor and you'll improve your balance. So, am I saying that you need to go full bore and to be like the barefoot shoe guy with the 5-finger toe shoes and run around with those all the time? Not really. But what I do want you to understand is like shifting from a shoe like a Haka to something like a Reebok Nano or something else, a minimalist style shoe or squatting barefooted even in the gym is something that could reduce your risk of injury while also helping you promote a little bit of foot strength and foot health overall. So, another thing to think about is like, hey, am I going to run a marathon in a minimalist shoe? No, I'm probably not going to do that because, on a road race in a minimalist shoe, I think that it would be a ton of impact for your feet. But knowing the purpose for the shoe that you are wearing, if you are wearing shoes in general, is going to be super important moving forward. Again, I did a ton of research before doing this, and another study showed that if you were to wear minimalist style shoes over the course of time, and they basically measured people's foot strength over a 6-month block, people increased their foot strength almost 60%, 57.4% over the course of a 6-month block, which essentially allowed them to be able to be more or less injury prone and improve their balance over time too. Something else to consider as you start to go purchase your shoes. So I know I talked a lot of benefits of using a minimalist or cross trainer shoe with a wide toe box when you're doing, cross training or weightlifting. But what I do want to do also is I want to make sure that we're aware of the dangers of minimalist shoes. So they're great for what I mentioned, but they can also be super dangerous if they're misused. And I'm going to talk about myself here, call myself out in my dunk training program to kind of talk about why. So I was working in some Vivo barefoot shoes that look very, very similar to these during a period and I guess current period as well, where I'm trying to be able to dunk a basketball. I'm doing essentially high intensity plyometrics. And the thing that ended up happening is I did not ease into training with these shoes in this type of way. I think I actually ended up overtraining in these types of shoes, which led to me injuring my foot in basically right under my big toe, maybe a little bit after that, or like towards my heel behind my toe. I had like kind of a dull pain kind of in the base of my arch. So all of that to say, it's something that I've since really started to diagnose. I've, investigated a ton into foot health, the ways that you can kind of stretch that out, ways that I can get my foot back to being, operating at max capacity. And I'll say that's kind of like the gift of injury in a way that everybody kind of gets when you do injure yourself, you kind of get to do a little bit of exploration. But all of that to say, the key when you are transitioning to wearing any style of minimalist shoe in general is that you need to strengthen your feet over time and not go full bore right away. Listening to your body is going to be super important. Would I recommend going into a plyometric training program if you've never worn a minimalist shoe before? Absolutely not. Do I recommend you going and playing basketball in a minimalist shoe if you've never worn them or trained in them before? No. So the way to do that is to kind of gradually increase your frequency that you wear it and the types of movements that you do with them so that your feet are naturally adjusting to the lifestyle that you're kind of living over time. So again, talked about a couple things, I guess ways that I have done some exploration from my dunk training injury that occurred. And this kind of boils down to some daily foot care. So things that you can do for your feet that are super, super important. And I wanted to really emphasize here in this quick chat. The biggest thing being you need to really listen to them. If your foot is feeling some, pain or discomfort, that's your body telling you something, giving you a sign that you need to change something and do some investigation or exploration. So a couple ways that you can do that, that I found super, super effective in my own training program is rolling them out with a lacrosse ball or a tennis ball, softball. I mean, any sort of hard ball that you can kind of get your hands on, you can throw under your feet and roll your arches out. I find that super helpful. Another thing too is being really intentional with your mechanics when you run or jump. So if you've ever recorded yourself jumping, running, or doing any of these types of movements, you'll start to find that the way that your foot is striking the ground could be something that is exaggerating your foot pain. So it could be something that you need to really look into to redefine or to basically relearn body mechanics so that you're able to minimize that impact on your foot and then improve your overall foot health over time. Another thing that I've been doing is I've been wearing toe spacers to help improve my spread of my toes. What these are essentially they're actually I've even got some here. I don't know if people will be able to see them, but these basically sit between your toes and they'll basically mount like so, and they're going to promote your foot and your toes to kind of spread apart like so. So the way that they are really effective is that they're promoting that kind of wider toe box feel, even though your feet have to be in shoes. Like, being in active duty military, you have to wear a certain style of boot, and there's no way you can get around that. So if that boot is really, really narrow, then it's something that you want to try and, expand upon when you get home, you're kicking back, watching TV on the couch. So toe spacers is another thing that I feel like has been super beneficial for me, and it's actually reduced the pain in the arch of my foot from wearing them. So something else you can look into. The other thing I want to say is don't be afraid of rest, massages, and that kind of self-care so that you can get back out there working hard as well. So, whether that's a foot roller, that's kind of got that ice attachment. I know some of those you can freeze like the ball and then roll your foot over. That's another pretty sweet gadget or gizmo that you can get. You can get your foot massage. You can just rest it, put it in an ice little tub. There's a ton of different ways that you can kind of skin the cat there. But these are just a couple of different things that I've done and had a bunch of success with so far. Does anybody, I guess you, Zach, that's here, have any questions? And no, I do not sell feet pictures. I just thought this would be pretty funny for me to end on. So,
Oh, it is.
without
It's funny.
further ado, go go ahead, hit me with anything that you got.
I actually did think of two.
Okay,
So,
lovely.
easy one first. Is there a particular brand of spacers that you use? Because I've tried a couple different ones over the years, and some of them really suck. Some are pretty good. So, I know just with you having done some of the more exploration with rest recovery in this regard, what's the brand that you like or that you're currently using?
So I'm not gonna lie, I don't actually know the brand of the ones that I'm using because I got them as a gift and I ripped the box open and I don't have it still. But when I figure it out, I will text it to you.
Okay.
And then I could even like in the video link, when I upload it to YouTube, I can put it in there too for anybody else that's gonna end up seeing it too. So I'll write that down and make sure I do that for you.
Cool. Okay. Um, Second one, a bit more of a bit of a deeper one. So, um, I run a lot, like I've told you just throughout the time of the course of our training and everything like that. And one of the earliest things I looked at, there were a couple studies done a few years ago. So I'm wondering if it's been dated information now or just been proved wrong, where um, with classic human physiology, there were a lot of benefits toward actually trying to improve your actual striking pattern when you're running to where you're going more midfoot or forefoot on your feet versus like a heel strike, which usually is promoted by having thicker padded shoes. Did you happen to come across anything like that when you were doing the research for this too, in terms of mechanics when it comes to running?
100%. Yeah, I read the exact same data that you read. And in creating this, I didn't want to get too far down the weeds of like, hey, this is the foot running mechanic that you're going to be using when you are running.
Oh,
But
sure. Yeah.
essentially, think about the guy who's running on his heels, guy or gal who runs on their heels versus somebody who's running on the balls of their feet. The person running on the balls of their feet is having less impact, excuse me, on their ankles, their knees, and their hips because of it. So if you're able to promote a more like 4 foot heavy running and striking pattern, then you will have less, you are less injury prone in the running world moving forward. But, you can still wear that, Haka style shoe if you're doing road running and have your foot strike properly. But the reason that they're so heel heavy and cushion heavy in the heel is because a lot of times people don't do that. So the way that the shoe industry has essentially taken that challenge on has been by promoting a ton of that,
Yeah.
padding back there, which again, when all that padding's there and you step on that rock and you feel like, you're on the Jenga tower, if you will, because you've created all that space between you and the ground, then it's really easy for you to kind of roll your ankles over, especially if they're not used to that type of pattern. So something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Cool. No, those are the two biggest ones that came to mind for me. Otherwise, this was super informative. So appreciate you.
Cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate you. I'm